Hello and very warm welcome at Amish Shackle 5858. I am Amish Shackle. Foreign news have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian news channels and the news agencies. So please let's go to the headlines.
Tonight, breaking news. Back-to-back winter storms sweeping through the east with an Arctic blast following close behind. President Trump threatens America's allies who oppose his plans for Greenland, and Minnesota mobilizing its National Guard as tensions rise. First winter roaring back to the eastern half of the country. More than 50 million Americans on alert. A 1-2 punch dumping snow from the Carolinas to New England. Up to 6 inches possible along parts of the I-95 corridor by tomorrow. And what's in store for the week ahead? Our weather team tracking it all. President Trump threatens more tariffs on American allies, including the UK, France, and Germany, all who have sent troops to Greenland, further testing the strength of the NATO alliance as protesters take to the streets in opposition to an American takeover, and a group of U.S. senators traveling to Denmark. Officials in Minnesota appealing for calm, governor mobilizing the National Guard as protesters to the hours after judge limit reporting from the new warning from the FAA to airlining in part of Latin America. Pilots exercise caution because of Inc.'s military activity in the region. The measles outbreak in South Carolina expands. More than 100 new cases in the past few days. New details in the arrest of actor Timothy Busfield facing child sex abuse charges in New Mexico. His lawyers pushing back what they're saying about the parents of one of his alleged victims. NASA rolls into an era, taking one step to return to the fears in the main. How the popularity of weight loss drugs like Ozempic might save airlines money. And America Strong, the teen who turned his passion for helping others into a long-term mission. On this Saturday, store. Also, Rashid Mark to the police what he's hoping to get out of Qatar after scoring a major deal with China. Plus, healthcare hurdles. What's driving more Canadians to look for treatment outside of the country? And one step closer. A new look at the spacecraft that will carry a cannot over the moon.
Global National reporting tonight.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. After weeks of defiant protests across Iran calling for the fall of the Islamic Republic, the deadly toll from the regime's merciless crackdown is becoming known. Today, Iran's supreme leader acknowledged thousands were killed during the demonstrations, but rather than blame Iran's security forces, he president for sparking violence and causing casualties. He called Trump a criminal, stoking concerns for what's next. Questions remain about what happened on the ground after authorities cut off internet and communications across the country. Disturbing accounts are emerging from an Iranian who managed to escape the bloodshed. Redmond Shannon spoke with him and has our top story and a tale thick.
This is what faced thousands of people in Iran earlier this month, a scene of chaos at morgues. Global News spoke to his name is since left Iran.
I got 2 layers of people, the died people in body bag, in zipper, in black zippers, and some part there were 3 layers.
One human rights group says it has verified more than 3,000 deaths. Other estimates are much higher. Kirash visited Tehran's largest cemetery after a friend was killed in a protest.
Like 2,000 in each warehouse, and I saw small bags, and I think that, oh my God, children's, many children's were there under these the dead bodies. I saw a mother who she was shaking, and she laid on a body, and she was shouting that this is my boy.
Kirash joined the protest that evening, and at one point he felt someone brush past his left.
I heard tap, 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 and suddenly I saw 3 people collapse. He or she was shooting us in the leg, in the neck, with silent gun. If he or she was left-handed, I couldn't talk with you right now.
What's your response to the
Our family. Massive from the people who attended children's outside of Iran, that their family, they're safe.
Kirash says he finds it hard to sleep now, but that he feels compelled to speak out despite the dangers.
This is my duty. It's hard, but it is not harder than being killed.
Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
The regime's deadly crackdown appears to have broadly quelled those defiant demonstrations across Iran. There have been no signs of protest for days now in Tehran. Fears that it has lost momentum, but solidarity protests and condemnation in countries around the world, including here in Canada, have not. Lexi Benedict reports.
A large sea and could be seen in hundreds of real. For the second week in a row, Iranian Canadians are here showing solidarity with their loved ones back home.
Please help these people. These people are in the street. We are in the street all over the world just to say something. We need change now.
According to the U.S.-based human rights activist news agency, more than 3,000 protesters have been killed. But Iranian Canadians say the fight for regime change from
has picked up significantly, and this is just like a wave after the wave, till we crush the regime, and we will not stop.
Protesters here are urging the West to intervene.
McCartney, Trump, Europe, they must do something for us now.
I want to bring in now former Deputy ICE Director, now Ohio congressional candidate, Madison Sheehan. Madison, welcome to the show. Listen, we have heard a lot from the leaders there in Minnesota, so I want to get everybody to listen to this really quickly.
We have ICE agents throughout our city and throughout our state who, along with Border Control, are creating chaos.
Help us create a database of the atrocities against Minnesotans, not just to establish a record for posterity, but to bank evidence for future prosecution.
All right, well, you now have Governor Walz, Madison, who's saying, oh, maybe the temperature needs to be turned down. But sort of in the same breath, he's also calling on people to record ICE agents at every turn. And according to DHS, ICE agents have seen an increase in vehicular attacks, in assaults, in death threats. So tell us what it's like for these men and women on the ground in Minneapolis. And by the way, where is the outrage for the victims of these criminal illegal aliens, Madison?
Well, look, the law enforcement officers at ICE are the bravest in the country. They go out every single day and they arrest gang members, murderers, and rapists. They work every day to clean up the mess left by the Biden administration. And that's what our officers do. And when people like Governor Walz choose to put forth this harmful rhetoric that the Democrats continue to have, we're seeing this all over the country. And that's exactly why I'm running for Congress, because the same Democrats that have voted for years to support immigration law are now saying the very laws that the men and women of ICE that are enforcing is wrong, and they shouldn't be doing that. And my opponent, Marcy Kaptur, is one of those people who's been in Congress for over 4 decades voting for the immigration laws that she now says ICE officers shouldn't be enforcing.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people were sad to hear your resignation as the deputy ICE director. You did a great job, but in doing so, you launched your congressional run there in Ohio. So give me an idea. Obviously, you're talking specifically about these immigration issues, but what initially motivated you to make this run, and what other issues do you think you want to address there for the state of Ohio?
Well, look, I'm an America First fighter. I want to be able to support President Trump and his agenda to be able to move it through Congress. And we need more fighters in Congress that work with President Trump to be able to get the job done. And this district has somebody in Congress for 43 years who have neglected them, and I'm ready to be home to fight for where I grew up and the hardworking people of Northwest Ohio to be able to get this job done for them.
Well, your opponent has actually served in Congress for more than 4 decades. And her campaign says the following: voters are tired of the self-dealing corruption and culture of lawlessness they've seen over the last year. They want a leader focused on affordability and real results. And Marty Kaptur consistently works across the aisle to deliver both. Madison, what is your response to that?
Well, look, President Trump has been a fighter for the American people. This is a district that voted for him overwhelmingly, and I'm excited to be able to take the America First agenda to Congress, to be able to fight for him and fight with him in Congress. And Marcy Kaptur has done a terrible job and should be out of a job. You know, if you run a business, you don't get to keep doing your job when you do a poor job, and it's time.
This is Sky News. The headlines: Donald Trump says the UK and other European countries will face 10% tariffs on US exports for opposing his takeover of Greenland. So Keir Starmer hits back at the threat, saying applying tariffs on NATO allies is completely wrong. The ramping up of the rhetoric comes as thousands march in the Danish capital with banners saying "Our land, our freedom." Also ahead, we hear from an Iranian protester who accuses the regime of a massacre, machine gunning the hopes of a generation on the streets of Tehran.
With the bullet, they shooting, they killing people. Boom, 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 boom. Easily like that.
Supporters of Uganda's President Museveni celebrate his 7th election win, but allegations of vote rigging persist. And the rocket that NASA hopes will take astronauts back to the moon for the first time in 53 years. Good morning. Donald Trump says he'll put a 10% tariff on British goods exported to the United States, claiming world peace is at stake over Greenland. The threat also extends to a number of other European countries who he says have created a very dangerous situation for what he calls the survival of the planet. A deadline of February has been set for a deal to be reached on buying Greenland. The US president says if nothing is agreed by then, tariffs will be imposed. So Keir Starmer has said that applying tariffs on allies is completely wrong. Our US correspondent David Blevins reports now from Washington.
The cold shoulder for Donald Trump. From the streets of the Danish capital, they sent a message: hands off Greenland.
This is important for the whole world. There are many small countries. None of them are for sale.
We're protesting against the orange dictator in the US who is trying to bully his way to undermine the sovereignty of the Greenlandic people and take away their right to decide who they want to be part of. The US president had already threatened to impose tariffs on countries standing in his way.
I may do that for Greenland too. I may put a tariff on countries if they don't go along with Greenland, because we need Greenland for national security, so I may do that.
Denmark has increased its military presence in Greenland. Its European partners, including France, Germany and the UK, sent a symbolic number of troops too. But America's commander-in-chief says they are playing a dangerous game. Posting on Truth Social, Donald Trump said world peace is at stake. China and Russia want Greenland, and there is not a thing that Denmark can do about it. They currently have 2 dog sleds as protection, one added recently. threatening a tariff of 10%, rising to 25%. He added, "This tariff will be due and payable until such time as a deal is reached for the complete and total purchase of Greenland." A congressional delegation of Democrats and Republicans visiting Denmark had just expressed concern about threats.
The people of Denmark are very anxious, are quite concerned, and the people of
everyone on the ABC Listen app. Today, flash floods, evacuations and a landslide. Parts of New South Wales are hit by heavy rain and strong winds. SES has been very busy on the ground. We've received over 1,700 calls for assistance, so extremely busy. Black smoke billows over Adelaide's northwest. Firefighters rush to extinguish a large industrial fire. Donald Trump targets allies with tariffs over European resistance to his desire to take over Greenland. And wildcard Talia Gibson becomes the first Australian through to the second round of the Australian Open. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ros Childs. A flood emergency in Narrabeen, north of Sydney, has been downgraded, with residents able to return with caution as attention turns further north. There's been more heavy rain and strong winds in several parts of New South Wales, where severe weather warnings remain in place. Parts of the northern beaches were evacuated late last night after life-threatening flash flooding. There was also a landslide at Great Mackerel Beach near the Barrenjoey headland, which impacted 3 properties.
We've been here for a few years now, and we know about the flood levels here, but I've never seen water up this high before. We've seen it here before, so just unrelenting rain.
We came out here, and the water level was up to the top of the second step, and we were just like, okay. So then we just spent half an hour trying to figure out if we could save anything in there, and then just made like a human chain and just passed everything up and along into the house.
The carpet got totally soaked. The mattress got totally soaked, so we evacuated to the lounge room to sleep.
We didn't get much sleep last night, wondering what was going to happen. Obviously, I'm not local. I've only lived here a short time, so my landlady came over and said, prepare to evacuate.
South of Sydney at Macquarie Pass, a woman died after being struck by a falling tree branch late yesterday. Emergency crews have responded to more than 1,700 call-outs across the state, including 24 flood rescues.
Today, the weather is still around that Sydney and mid-north coast area. The weather system is moving up north, so we are still seeing that consistent rainfall, and there will be localised heavy rainfall within that area. It does look like tomorrow there will be some easing in those areas. However, there is more weather that's looked to be predicted from Tuesday onwards.
Meanwhile, flood warnings are still...
This is Asia Now.
It's 12 p.m. noon in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi, and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Grace Shin, and at this hour, Indonesian authorities locate debris suspected to be part of a missing passenger plane. The aircraft was carrying 10 people when it lost contact with ground control in South Sulawesi province. UMNO, a key partner in Malaysia's unity government, is calling for party cohesion, rebranding, and a, quote, grand collaboration with the nation's Malay Islamic parties as it wrapped up its annual general meeting. Plus, U.S. President Donald Trump vows to impose a 25% tariff on a host of NATO allies, including France, Germany, and the UK. That is until the U.S. is allowed to purchase Greenland. Indonesian rescuers have found large aircraft debris around the last known location of a plane that disappeared yesterday afternoon. Rescue operations are ongoing for the missing 10 people who were on board the aircraft. Authorities warn, though, that steep terrain and bad weather have hampered search efforts.
Authorities are verifying the wreckage found on Mount Bulu Saraung in the Maros region of South Sulawesi province, and officials suspect the aircraft came down near that area. Footage from the National Search Agency show what appears to be a plane's fuselage and tail. Helicopters and drones have been deployed alongside hundreds of Air Force, police, and volunteers.
Masih kita gerakan dulu anggota ke sana ke kaki Gunung Bulu Saraung. Nanti kita akan melihat kondisi cuaca. Kalau memang memungkinkan, kita tetap melaksanakan pencarian.
The aircraft was on its way to Makassar from Yogyakarta before it lost contact with ground control at around 1:30 p.m. local time. It was last seen on radar around 19 kilometers from its intended destination. The ATR 42500 turboprop plane was chartered by the Marine Affairs Ministry and operated by Indonesia Air. The plane was carrying 7 crew members and 3 government workers, all who were conducting air surveillance on fisheries. At least 3 people have died in Pakistan's largest city, Karachi, after a massive blaze swept through a shopping mall on Saturday night. A dozen others were injured in the fire. Thick black smoke billowed as firefighters rushed to the scene after the flames broke out around 10 p.m. local time. Most shop owners were already closing their stores or had already left.
हम लोग ने बंद करने के टाइम में हमने कस्टमर को बोला फ्लो खत्म करो. कस्टमर फ्लो खत्म करा. फिर 5 नंबर गेट है ग्राउंड फ्लोर का, वहाँ से आग देखी कस्टमर लड़के ने. वहाँ पे भी हम लोग ने मारे बॉल्स वगैरह मारे, फिर भी कुछ नहीं हुआ. 10:10 से लगी हुई थी आग अचानक. फिर बड़ा कोटी.
And authorities say the fire began to spread quickly after erupting in an area where clothing and plastic household goods were stored, which further fueled the flames. Police are investigating the exact cause of the fire. UMNO, a key partner of Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's unity government, has proposed a, quote, grand collaboration involving all Malay Islamic political parties in the country. Party President Ahmad Zahid Hamidi says the move is aimed at uniting shared struggles and not meant to enable any backdoor maneuvers against Mr. Anwar's government.
Yang amat hormat Perdana Menteri, jangan risau. Saya tidak akan ada agenda untuk tebuk atap atau mahu menggugat kerajaan perpaduan, tapi semata-mata bertujuan untuk menterjemahkan keikhlasan UMNO untuk merangkul semua parti-parti Islam dan parti Melayu berada satu bumbung demi kepentingan dan agenda menterjemahkan agenda Islam dan agenda Melayu.
The proposal was unveiled at the end of UMNO's 4-day General Assembly in Kuala Lumpur and was overwhelmingly endorsed by delegates. The assembly took place at a critical moment for the party as it marks its 80th anniversary and navigates its role within the unity government. And CNA senior correspondent Melissa Goh has more on the key takeaways from the General Assembly.
The party president, Ahmad Zahid Hamidi, took pains to explain to the delegates at the close of the annual Congress why UMNO must continue to support Prime Minister Anwar's unity government. UMNO, he said, should appreciate the trust and confidence the Prime Minister placed on UMNO in the 17-party coalition. He said, because despite having won only 30 seats, UMNO-led Barisan Nasional coalition have 8 ministers in the government, and many UMNO leaders were appointed to helm government and state-owned agencies and enterprises. In fact, he told delegates that Prime Minister Anwar shares similar DNA with UMNO. He was ultimately from UMNO. Although many within UMNO cannot see eye to eye with coalition partner DAP because the DAP is undermining the interests of Malays and Islam, the president told them that the partnership with DAP is
Africa News. The news. At least 8 people have died in Mozambique since 21st December due to the heavy rainfall, according to the National Institute for Disaster Management. The Southern African country has endured weeks of heavy rain as residents of low-lying areas near the capital Maputo were urged Friday to move to higher grounds. I am very scared. On my way there, it was okay. I went by foot, and it was passable. On the way back, it was complicated. Yes, the water is powerful, but thanks God, we made it. We are alive. Thank God, local authorities have struggled to meet growing needs for transport and evacuations. Many households remain isolated in high-risk areas with no safe ways to live. Authorities say schools have been identified to shelter displaced families and are urging residents to leave flood-prone zones. The big challenge we have is to tell people to leave. Today in particular, we are telling people to leave their homes. We are working with the army forces here. We have the commander, our partner. There is zero tolerance for those people who are in danger zones. They must leave voluntarily, or with the government, with the defense forces, will take them out by force because the alert is red. Meanwhile, heavy rains have also hit northeastern South Africa since late last year, killing at least 30 people in the two affected provinces. The South African Weather Service kept parts of the region on maximum alert Friday, warning of more torrential rains causing widespread floodings. Members of a newly formed Palestinian Technocratic Committee are to be involved in the running of Gaza during the second phase of the ceasefire deal met in Cairo on Friday. The meeting was chaired by Ali Saab, a former deputy minister in the Palestinian Authority, who will lead the committee. The Technocratic Committee will be tasked with providing public services to the more than 2 million Palestinians in Gaza under the oversight of a board of peace led by US President Donald Trump, whose members have also not yet been named. After the US announcement, the start of its second phase, the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas still faces a number of challenges, including the deployment of an international security force to supervise it and the disarmament of Hamas.
It's a surprise announcement. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he's ready to repair diplomatic ties with Europe, despite relations remaining at their lowest point since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
как по линии официально. Хочется верить, что со временем...
I would like to believe that over time the situation will change and our countries will return to normal, constructive communication based on the principles of respect for national interests and consideration of legitimate security concerns. Russia has been and remains committed to precisely these approaches and is ready to restore the level of relations we require.
Thank you for watching Ahmed Shakil 5858. I am Ahmed Shakil. I hope you will visit again. Have a good life. Bye-bye.